Good evening. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Temple Bethel. Welcome to Julian. We're excited to have you all here. We are going to start in just a minute. A couple of friendly reminders. Please turn off your cell phone. I know you believe with all your heart that you turned it off before you got here, but please check one more time. There are, on your way out this evening, there are still some snacks in the reading room, and please feel free to take a Yom HaShoah candle as you leave the building tonight. So give us just a couple of minutes and we'll get started. Thank you all.
Erev Tov, good evening everyone, and welcome to Temple Bethel. We're glad you're here today to learn together this evening. As we read the news, as we hear all the stories coming out of Israel, it can be hard to know what's true and what's going on and what's actually happening. So the best way to learn is events like this one, where you get to hear it directly from someone living it. So thank you for being here tonight. I want to take a brief moment and thank Stephanie Butler from Temple Bethel, Victoria Kimmerling at the Birmingham Jewish Federation, Monica Singletary at Temple Emmanuel, and Margaret Norman from the Jewish Community Relations Council for helping coordinate and put together this program today. And I also want to thank everyone from all of those organizations for helping make this happen. And, of course, as I introduce him, I also want to thank Julian Resnick for coming to speak tonight. For those who don't know him, Julian was born in South Africa and made Aliyah to Israel in 1976. He and his wife Orly are members of Kibbutz Sora near Jerusalem. Julian has worked in Zionist and Jewish education since completing his service in the Israel Defense Forces in 1979. And has guided extensively both in Israel and abroad, focusing on the story of the Jewish people. Julian also has deep connections to Birmingham. He's guided all of our community's friendship journey missions since 2008, as well as guiding groups of friends and families from Birmingham through Israel, Europe, Morocco, and South Africa over the years. We are honored to have Julian present his personal insider's account of the emotions and thoughts Israelis are experiencing right now, as we'll invite Julian to come up and speak.
You can hear me now, right? You can hear me? No? Can you hear me? Okay. So the last time I was introduced, somebody used ChatGPT to introduce me, which the rabbi didn't do this evening. And when they introduced me using ChatGPT, they left out the crucial fact. When I talk about things I care about, I get very, very emotional. So I will do my best to get to the end of my presentation this evening, and I want to tell you it's fine, I'm okay. It's just that I never ever learned to control my emotions in all of the years that I've been doing this. So I want to just start by saying every time I speak about this topic, it's different, it changes. You know, the rabbi said to me just about 10 minutes ago, did you change what you were going to say this afternoon because things are happening all the time? And I did change what I was going to say this afternoon, but not because things are happening all the time, but because already my wife and I had a conversation, and based on some of the thoughts that we exchanged, I decided to add a few things to this evening, and I got in touch with one of my children in Israel, my middle child, Maya, and I asked her if she could just get a few things from her friends who have served recently in Gaza, so I could share directly from young soldiers some of the thoughts and some of the experiences from recent times. So by the way, my connection with Birmingham, in a way, sounds a little bit like a joke when I tell how it started, because it begins with a rabbi and the Pope. Now, when you tell a story that begins with a rabbi and the Pope, you expect them to walk into a bar or something like that, but it's not one of those. In 2005, the Catholic Church, it was 40 years since the Catholic Church issued one of the most important documents for the Jewish people called Nostra Aetate, a document which absolved us of responsibility for deicide. To celebrate that 40th anniversary, I was asked by the World Union for Progressive Judaism to bring a group to meet with the Pope in Rome. We went to Rome after I'd had many meetings at the Vatican with cardinals beforehand. Great guys, by the way. I don't drink, so I can't tell you whether they did. We had these wonderful meetings. We arrived there. Rabbi Jonathan Miller was in the group. Hal Abrams was supposed to be, but he wasn't well when the group left, so he didn't join us. And we never saw the Pope, by the way, because something happened. The Pope got terribly ill. And the rabbi said, let's go and pray outside the hospital. I said, are you crazy? Can you imagine if we pray outside the hospital and God forbid he passes away? What will happen to us? So we didn't pray outside the hospital. Unfortunately, the Pope did pass away. But that's when I met Jonathan. And it is thanks to Jonathan and all praise to Jonathan that I'm actually here this evening. But more than me being here, that I have had the incredible luck of being involved with a wonderful, wonderful community, both Jewish and Gentile. And I'm so happy that there are people from both those communities here this evening together. And, you know, when you're an Israeli, I know my accent is wrong. I should change it when I say when you're an Israeli, but I can't. When you're an Israeli, when you visit America, you visit New York and Los Angeles. Who goes to Birmingham, Alabama? When I tell people in the States that I'm going to Birmingham, Alabama, they say, what? I mean, in Israel, what? What are you doing? So I'm going to move to serious stuff in just a moment. I speak on behalf of no one this evening, no organization, and I want to say something that I always say to the groups that I guide, and I've guided quite a few of you. To my left stands an Israeli who disagrees with a lot of what I'm going to say this evening. To my right stands an Israeli who disagrees with a lot of what I'm going to say this evening. Thank God I live in a place where there are different points of view, where people feel free to express their differences. What I'm looking for and working for are societies in which two things happen. One, we recognize our common humanity, and two, we recognize that difference is absolutely fine and part of what makes us human. So I speak on behalf of my beliefs. I have strong beliefs. I've lived in Israel now, as you heard, for almost 50 years. You can come to the pool party on my kibbutz next year for my 50th Aliyah celebration. And I care deeply, really deeply about the place that I live in. It's also where my children and my 8 grandchildren were born. And anybody who's lucky enough to have children and grandchildren knows that, that is the greatest blessing of them all. So when I was preparing, I thought of a book. Some of you might have read a book not about Israel. One of the most extraordinary books I've ever read in the last 25 years is a book written by Jonathan Safran Foer. He wrote it after 9/11. And the book is called Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. It's an extraordinary book, not only for the content, but for the style as well. At some point in the book, when he gets to the most difficult parts, you turn the page and there's nothing on the page. And you turn the page and there's nothing on the page, because words cannot express the emotions and the trauma that people went through on 9/11, and therefore he, as a writer, lets us go through blank pages for a while until he uses words again. And sometimes that's how I feel when I talk about Israel, that actually the words are inadequate, that in a way silence sometimes is the words that should be used. But I've come a long way, so I'm not going to be silent. When I speak and when I work, there is a Jewish value that I mention right at the beginning of everything I do. And that value is derech eretz. Derech eretz, the easiest translation is basic decency. There is a way that we disagree with each other. We have the right to disagree with each other. We never have the right to hurt each other, to insult each other. Be respectful of the person with whom you do not agree, as tough as it is. And that is what I ask people to do on my groups, and I know that it's getting even tougher with the new regime in America, the new administration, but that is what I expect of people who travel with me, to hear other people, listen to them, disagree, but never to hurt them. So I want to say a few things about Israel and what we're going through. And one of my dear friends in Birmingham sent me an article which was called Remember Just Who You Are. And it was an important article to receive, even though I disagreed fundamentally with a lot of what the writer wrote. But the wonderful thing about reading things that one disagrees with is they often bring new thoughts and new angles forward. And he was talking about that great character in The Lion King, remembering who he was. And he was suggesting that we have to remember the terrible things that have been done to us as a Jewish people over the centuries and respond with strength when we are threatened again. So I do believe that. I believe that firmly, that we have to respond in strength. But I think that when I remember who we are, I remember other things as well. And I don't for a moment want to lose those other things, even in the most difficult and painful situation we find ourselves in, and we are in the most difficult and painful situation, far greater than I could ever have imagined. I constantly wake up and say to myself, seriously, am I living through this? Or is this just a nightmare that I'm waking up from? So what has the last 18 months been? It's been months of war, loss, death, funerals, Shiva, the week of mourning, memorials, wounded soldiers, rehabilitation centers, marriages falling apart, and incredible ordinary people volunteering, doing amazing things for each other. You know, when you think of, so people say, so what could I do as a volunteer? So a group of guys, older guys, like, one or two of you in this room, who had a few skills, they're not like me, I can't fix anything. They could fix things and do things. So what did they do? They made showers, mobile showers. They took them down to the front line for soldiers to have a shower after being in the front line for a week or two. By the way, having a shower, it's something you miss terribly. You know what they did? In each cubicle, they put a pair of clean socks and clean underwear. That's called seeing people. That's called paying attention to what people need. And Israel has been filled in the last 18 months with extraordinary, ordinary people doing wonderful and amazing things for each other. Really, quite extraordinary. That is one of the things that keeps me hopeful in Israel. The fact that ordinary people, and as you might hear in that, there is me not saying, you can probably hear what I'm not saying when I say that at least ordinary people are doing the right thing. At least ordinary people are standing for the values of what I think we really are. I have brought a few things with me from Israel. I'm not good at the high-tech stuff, so I bring actual stuff that you can see. So I went to Hostage Square. You know, in Tel Aviv, there's a place that the families connected to the hostages have been there constantly for over 550 days in the center of Tel Aviv, just so that we shouldn't forget for a single moment the incredible trauma that we are going through. I said to them, I'm coming to the States. Give me merchandise, something you want me to show when I speak. And this is the shirt they gave me. Most of you will recognize it immediately. This is the shirt. You remember there was that young woman who was held as a hostage by the Hamas for over 400 days, and two of her fingers were badly damaged, and this was the sign she made when she came out, Emily Damari. They said to me, show the shirt. Show this shirt because it's something that we're very proud of. I'm going to be in Auschwitz-Birkenau next week. One of the 4 women who were captured together, Emily was one of them, is a violinist. She is going to be using one of Amnon's violins from Violins of Hope and playing at the ceremony. So, just in terms of all of the symbolic part of our lives and our history coming together, I can't imagine what it's going to be like. I'm terrified, by the way, to guide in Poland next week. It's always hard for me to guide in Poland. I can't begin to imagine what it's going to feel like next week. I was guiding, by the way, on the 7th of October in Greece. And I said to my group when I realized about a day later what was going on, what shall we do? And we continued. And every morning we spent 45 minutes doing something. And every evening one of the women in the group was a therapist. And she was wonderfully helpful. On the last day in Saloniki, some of you have been with me to Saloniki, a wonderful woman that I guide who has a cousin in the community over here, a woman called Hela Matalon. I said to her in front of the carriage that was used at the train station to send the Jews of Saloniki to Auschwitz, I said, Hela, normally I stand over here and I say to you, if you want your grandkids to be Jewish, Hela, they have to come to Israel now, you know, it's the only place for them. And I said, what do I say to you today? How can I say that to you today when what is happening in Israel? I brought another shirt. So, just so you should be aware where I stand politically, about 3 weeks ago now, I was part of something called a March on Jerusalem. Now, I love English, I love language. A different preposition could have been used, right? But a March on Jerusalem is a very precise way of making a statement about what the intention of the march was. So we marched on Jerusalem to make statements and to ask for things and to make sure that certain things were being heard in the public domain. Now, this is the color of the shirt. One or two of you might have been in the military, right? Maybe, yeah? You recognize, of course, this is the color that you wear in the military. This is a shirt that belongs to an organization which was called initially Achim Leneshek, which means comrades in arms. But the problem is Hebrew, everything has a gender. It's now called Achim ve'achayot Leneshek. Comrades in arms in English, but in Hebrew it's comrades masculine and comrades feminine in arms. Because as you will hear later from something I'll share with you, many, many women have been centrally involved in the battle with our enemies, in all types of extraordinary roles. So this was part of the March on Jerusalem. When we did the march on Jerusalem, we actually marched for about 8 miles up the highway to Jerusalem. For me it was okay because I walk with Donald occasionally over here in Birmingham, so I'm in reasonable shape. We marched on Jerusalem. Every time we stopped for water, somebody spoke. And I want you to understand, sometimes you might read, depending on what media you watch or read, that the people who are demonstrating in Israel are not exactly patriots. I would say it's exactly the opposite. The people who are demonstrating in Israel at the moment are at the core of Zionist patriotism. The first person who spoke was a woman whose grandson, probably should say his body, has been held by the Hamas for over 10 years. She was the first speaker. The second speaker was a man whose son was murdered on the 7th of October. The third speaker was a retired general from the IDF who'd also lost a son fighting in the war. These were the speakers. I took some very bad video footage which I used to teach. I work with a congregation in New York every other week, and I showed them the video footage that I took at different points during the march. And I asked them, what stuck out for you more than anything else? And you know what they said? Israeli flags. We fly the flag all the time because we want people to know that we believe that we're not the only patriots, but we are among the patriots in the state of Israel. Of course there are patriots who disagree with us. Of course they are. And they're equally patriotic. But we are the patriots who believe that there has to be a certain type of future for the state of Israel. You want to ask me afterwards what type of future? I'll be happy to talk about it. And you arrive in Jerusalem, and what song do we sing? There's only one song we would sing, of course, Hatikva. Now, I have sung Hatikva in many different places in the world. I will say that until that Hatikva in Jerusalem, the most moving Hatikva I ever sang was actually in Vienna. I was in Vienna. Vienna has this extraordinary remain of a 13th century synagogue that was uncovered a number of years ago. I was in Vienna at the remains of the synagogue. Somebody in the group pointed out to me, it had escaped my mind, that we were standing at the synagogue on the 27th of January, International Holocaust Memorial Day. And he said to me, this wonderful man, he's a very good musician, he said to me, Julian, we have to do something. So I said, what should we do? He said, well, my uncle was liberated from Auschwitz on the 27th of January. It came out in the morning for the appel, but the Germans weren't there. And they said to each other, he tells a story, his uncle and the people in his barrack turned to each other and said, so what should we do? And somebody said, let's sing. And he said, this lovely man that travels with me, let's sing what they sang. And we sang Hatikva. The third thing I want to share about that march on Jerusalem was a psychiatrist spoke. An Orthodox psychiatrist spoke. Now, why do I mention an Orthodox Jewish psychiatrist? I could just say a psychiatrist because it's so important to understand that the people, I was going to say are not hippies, but I'm clearly not a hippie either. I used to be when I demonstrated in South Africa 50 years ago, but a few years have passed. As you can see, I don't have a Jew fro anymore, as I had back in the day. So an Orthodox psychiatrist speaks, and he said something which I think that you should think about deeply, because I think it is appropriate not only for Israel, it's appropriate in any society where there is any type of conflictual situation. He said there are 3 types of injuries in conflictual situations. The first is physical injury, and we have medical doctors who take care of it. The second is emotional injury, and we have therapists who work with that. And the third, he said, is moral injury. Moral injury is when what is happening in the world that you are a part of, things happen which impact on the building blocks, the basic building blocks that your society is based on in terms of the basic moral code of society. And he suggested there is only one way to deal with moral injury, You know what his answer was? Be an activist. Speak up. Stand up. He said that is the only way you will not come out the other side of a terribly conflictual situation feeling damaged forever. By the way, most work in academia that's been done around moral injury is in the States. During which period? The Vietnam War. That's when most of the serious work was done about moral injury. I brought you a few, just a few of these to see from the demonstrations, not necessarily from the same ones. I know that everybody's Hebrew is perfect. But I will translate. Let me just get some water. I'm struggling. I removed one. After hearing Ed Sirota yesterday, I think I could have brought it. I removed one because I knew there'd be Sifrei Torah scrolls over here, and I wasn't sure that I would feel comfortable having one of them in front of the Torah scrolls. So this one says, Dorshim Va'adat Chakira Mamlachtit, which is basically saying we want a commission of inquiry. The government in Israel is doing everything in its power to prevent there being a commission of inquiry into what happened on the 7th of October. And we are saying, not all of us, there are some people who are not saying that, of course, but many of us are saying, I think actually it would be true to say a majority of Israelis are saying, we need a commission of inquiry. If you are number one, you have responsibility. If you're the CEO of a corporation, or if you run a major museum, or whatever you do, and something goes badly wrong, you have to answer for what has gone wrong. So we're asking for a commission of inquiry. A second one I brought for a particular reason, because anybody who ever reads traditional Jewish texts will see that the font that is used is one that you would see in traditional Jewish texts. And it says, Mishma min lo mafkir. And it's a very clever set of puns over here. I'm not sure how they work in English. It says, if you believe, you don't let people down. And what it is basically saying, it's testing the government and saying to the government, if you really are a government that is a coalition that includes people of belief, and they are people of belief, serious belief, then you cannot just allow people to be let down in the way that you've done that. You have to take responsibility. The third one, by the way, is one of the big, big debates in Israeli society. There's a graphic, so some of you might get it. Those of you who feel that it's too small, all it means is you're sitting too far away, and there are seats closer. It says, Charidim yakablu, miluimnikim yishalmu. The ultra-Orthodox will receive, and the reservists will pay. And there is a strong, strong feeling in Israeli society that the burdens, my feeling as well, the burdens are not equally shared. And I really think it is something that we have to think about very seriously if going forward in Israel. I have two more things that I want to share with you, and then I really will ask you to ask me questions so that you can hear the types of things you want to hear that I haven't addressed. This is an amazing book. I don't know if any of you know it. Every synagogue, by the way, should have copies in their library, so if you don't have yet, it's time to go to Amazon. This book, there's a pun. Shiv'ah in Judaism is the first period of mourning, the 7 days of mourning, but Sheva is also Shiv'ah, the 7th of October. So it plays with the date of the terrible massacre on the 7th of October and the notion of being in mourning. The red flowers also have it's a double meaning, because those of you, I'm not sure what, in America, do the poppies, do you have them on Remembrance Day, like in Britain? No, you don't. So in Britain and in Europe, the poppy, the red poppy, is the sign of solidarity with people who have fallen in times of war. It's a big thing in Europe. But also, these are the flowers that every year bloom in the area adjacent to the Gaza Strip. When you go today to the place of the Nova Festival where the awful things happened in the music festival, they're flowering. When I was there recently, they were flowering. So, and it's called Dromadom when you go down, red in the south, but of course red is the color of something else as well. This book of poetry was put together by a wonderful educator who I've had the privilege of knowing for many years. Her name is Rachel Korazim. I mention her because she deserves mention. Some of you who've done stuff around Holocaust will know her. She's a wonderful woman. Her mother became pregnant with her in the DP camp. After the war, she was born in Israel just after her parents arrived in Israel. She's a Hungarian Jew. And what she did after the 7th of October, she went to Facebook, she went to Instagram, she went to Twitter, and she saw what ordinary people were putting up. And she felt there was incredible poetry in what was being written. Almost all of the poems in this book were written by people who have no pretensions of being poets. And the stories behind them and why they wrote and how they wrote are as powerful as the book itself. The great thing is they were all written in Hebrew, but they're all translated. It's Israel, so some of the poets, the people who wrote the pieces didn't like the translation, so they did their own translation, and it's always the translation that the person who wrote the poem is comfortable with. I'm going to read you a few poems from here. Maybe you'll be surprised, maybe by at least one of them, but this one is written by a man with an extraordinary story. He had a child who passed away many years ago, 5-10 years ago. He used to write a lot. When the child got ill and then passed away, he lost the ability. He couldn't put pen to paper. He just couldn't do it. When the war broke out, all of a sudden, he could. Something had happened in him. Now, in Hebrew, by the way, for you, in Hebrew, the poem is called Ima Tamid Tzodeket. Mother or mom is always right. Now, you need to understand the poem, you need to know that in Israel, when you have kids, it's hard to look at my son and say this. When you have kids, especially boys, you always say, when you are an adult, there won't be an army. We won't have to send you to the army. We won't have to send you to the army. We always say to little boys, when you're big, it's okay. You won't have to go to the army. That's your biggest prayer and hope, that when they're big, they won't have to go to the army. It's much easier to go to the army yourself than for your son to go to the army. Elad and I were in the same unit. I was there many, many years before him. Mom said that when I grow up, there'll be no army. Mom was right. I haven't yet grown up, and already there was no army. It wasn't there when I heard the screaming outside. It wasn't there when I saw Dad so scared and stressed. It wasn't there when the door was kicked in. It wasn't there when I hid under the bed. It wasn't there when we three pushed back on the door of the safe room. It wasn't there when time just stood still. It wasn't there when they suddenly entered. It wasn't there when they tore Dad from Mom. Mom said that when I grow up, there will be no army. Mom was right. Now I only want to tell her that she's always right. I've cried, I've screamed, and still she is silent. He is a musician, by the way, Itai Lev. He just does this now because something happened, obviously, to him during the war. I want to read you a poem by somebody you all know. You don't know her personally, but she's probably the most well-known of all the parents of the hostages. And her name is Rachel Goldberg. Pauline? When she wrote this, Hirsch was still alive, and she hoped he would be coming back. Listen very carefully. Everything she says over here is really important to hear. There's a Yiddish lullaby that says, Your mother will cry 1,000 tears before you grow to be a man. I have cried 1,000,000 tears in the last 67 days. We all have. And I know, way over there is another woman who looks just like me, because we're all so very similar. She has also been crying all those tears. Our sea of tears, they all taste the same. Can we take them, gather them up and remove the salt, and then pour them over our desert of despair and plant one tiny seed, a seed wrapped in fear, trauma, pain, and hope, and see what grows? Could it be that this woman, so very like me, that she and I could be sitting together in 50 years, laughing with our teeth because we have drunk so much sweet tea together, and now we are so very old, and our faces are creased like worn-out brown paper bags, and our sons of their own grandchildren have long lives, one without an arm. But who needs two arms anyway? Is it all a dream, a fantasy, a prophecy? One tiny seed? Now, I want to tell you, when I read this poem the first time, it was long after Hirsch had been murdered by Hamas, and only his body had returned. But I think the extraordinary thing about Rachel is that she is still, I think still today, clear that there is a type of Israel that she wants to see in the future. Not an Israel of revenge. I understand revenge. I understand anger. I understand people who sometimes do not do the right thing because they have seen awful things happen. But after that point of responding like that, will we have a leadership? Will we have a people who will remember who we are, who we're supposed to be, the light we are supposed to bring to this world? And I think Rachel talks about that very, very, very beautifully. The last one I'm going to read to you, and then I have one or two other things I want to do, and then it's over to you. Now, this one has a challenging name, of course, for some Jewish audiences. It's called Salam Alaikum, little girl. You realize that Salam Alaikum is not Hebrew, it's Arabic. Salam Alaikum, little girl from Gaza. I'm writing to tell you that it's not your fault. I know you're not to blame, that our home suffered a direct hit by a rocket, that it was not your choice that all our property burned down. My nightmares and ours are not your fault. Alaikum salam, little girl from Gaza. I'm sorry you are hungry. It's not my fault. I didn't choose for you to stand so long in line for such a miserable portion of food. Forgive me honestly, I know that you're not at all connected to this, that you are exhausted, that you are cold at night. The little you had was taken away from you. I also know that everyone's feelings here have been blunted, that no one feels pity, not even compassionate women, for your distress. I'm so sorry that the perfect synchronization was achieved between corrupt men pursuing profit with dulled senses. From this side, miserable politicians, on your side, terrorists. Forgive me, little girl from Gaza. I know that if you could, you would release all the hostages and ask to return with your teddy bear to the place that perhaps once was your relatively warm home. Forgive me for the hunger, the thirst, the frailty, the longing for sanity, the yearning for a place of your own. Excuse me if inadvertently or not, we also killed your mother, or perhaps a relative, for sure. Welfare and hope, maybe when you grow up, things will be slightly different. Forgive me, little girl from Gaza. It's not your fault. You really are wonderful. I ask forgiveness. You don't have to forgive. I just want to write you or perhaps send some strength. So sorry, my dear. Sorry for everything. You should know that in our hearts too, in spite of the lack of symmetry, a deep chasm has opened. I'm not naive. I know that our enemies have to be defeated. I know that we have to have a future in which we can live safely. At the same time, I know that the little girls from Gaza are not responsible for what happened. Two great crimes were committed by Hamas on October 7th. One was the crime against us, and the second equally great crime was the crime they committed to their own people. The suffering of the little girl in Gaza is really really responsibility first and foremost of the Hamas because of what they did. They are manipulating public opinion. They are using the little girl. They are placing little girls and still shooting the occasional rockets from places where little girls are to be found. And I have to say, I despair when I see how shallow the thinking is of so many of the people who see this, see what's going on, and have for some reason been able to forgive the people who perpetrated the terrible deeds on the 7th of October and only see the incredible complications that have happened subsequently in our region because of that. Now, I want to tell you the story of, thank you for the tissues, Rabbi. I want to tell you the story of just 2 sirens. So we deal with sirens. We deal with sirens a lot. It is weird. In my phone, I have an app. I was somewhere the other day in Birmingham, and I heard on my app that a missile had been launched in Yemen, not against Birmingham, but because my app shows me when it's launched at places where we live, and where our daughter lives in Tel Aviv. That's on my phone, so I know immediately. So one of the joys of my life are my 8 grandchildren, and we are lucky enough to live about 200 yards from one of our daughters, Maya, and she has, there was 4, 3 little ones. It was wishful thinking. Elad has 4. She has 3 little ones. The youngest, his name is Ro'i, but because I'm of South African origin, the diminutive you use in South Africa to show affection is Ki. So he's Roikiki, little Roiki, Roikiki. He's just a year and 10 days old now, but I have the pleasure, since he's about 6 months old, of picking him up in the morning at just before 7 o'clock and walking him to the baby house on the kibbutz where we live. I love it. I can't tell you how much I love it. It's beyond words. I take him one morning at about 7:20. I drop him off in the baby house. By the way, the people working in the baby house, one of them is a religious Moroccan woman, one of them is a secular kibbutznik, and one of them is an Arab woman. Those are the women who work there, as it should be in this world. And I drop him off. I don't remember which one of them took him. 5 minutes later, I'm at home having my morning coffee, and the siren goes for incoming missile. Now, I know he's with them, and I know that what I'm supposed to do, I've got 90 seconds to get into the bomb shelter across the road from us, but I can't. How can I go into the bomb shelter? I walk back. Well, I try to run. I'm not very good at running anymore, but I sort of, with my knee replacement, I sort of run back to the baby house. He's fine, but I just have to see him. That's one siren. But the second siren, he has a brother and a sister who are 5 and 3. They have taken now to sleeping in the safe room in their house. All homes built in Israel after a certain date have to have a safe room in. So they now sleep on this mattress in the safe room. So what do they tell me? They tell me, Saba, which means granddad, we twins now. It's amazing. 2 little children, incoming missiles, they tell me now that they are twins because they're sharing something so profound. One of the missiles that was fired recently was intercepted, and the big issue is not so much at the moment the missiles landing, because we, thank God, have wonderful anti-ballistic missiles interceptor systems. One is called the Arrow, one is called David Sling, and the one that we did together with you guys is called the Iron Dome. Intercepted, but the problem is the interceptor missile, the pieces often fall in Israel. 20 meters, 30 yards from our house. A 30-kilo piece of metal falls from the atmosphere, just, literally 30 yards from our house. It is, living with these sirens is quite something. Ori and I were in a bus going to Tel Aviv. The protocol when a siren goes off is the bus stops. You get off the bus, you sit at the side of the road, down like this, and you wait for the all clear. So it's easy to do that, to sit down. that I have to admit, I had to say to the young guy next to me, do you think you could help me stand up? It's not that easy anymore to stand up. So it's weird because there's this feeling that they're firing ICBMs at me? Seriously? At us? And that is one of the tough things. I've guided for many years. Large numbers of the people that I guide are good, decent, open-minded, liberal people for whom it is very hard to imagine that one has an enemy that wishes to destroy you. It's a tough one. For me, it's hard to often fathom that. But that is part of the reality that we live with. I see these people in Yemen, I think, what for? But I decided to do one last thing today. I got in touch with Maya, my middle child, and I said to her, could you please send me from 2 of your friends who have been serving? Could you send me something that they've just written? So she sent me 2 things, both written by women from the front lines. One of them a doctor who's been serving in Gaza with a unit on the front line. And one of them a woman who is an officer in one of the special units. This is from the doctor, a conversation that she had with her daughter. Mommy, who did you take care of today? For the first time since I got here, civilians, I say to myself, but not out loud. I'm here with my friend Sharon, who's also a doctor, I explained to my daughter. We work together, my girls. But who did you help? Now, the next 2 words are in Arabic. Ana doctora, please, doctor. She's quoting what a Gazan civilian said to her. I looked after Yusuf, an elderly man, a little cross-eyed. He had chest pains. He cried a little, grabbed his own shirt. I held his hand, checked his blood pressure, told him to take slow, deep breaths. I used the little Arabic I know to calm him down, gave him medication, and using a little pantomime, showed him how to take it. He kissed my hand. Ana, doctora, in Arabic, please, doctor. I looked after Noor, with a head covered and a floral dress. She apparently got a hard knock and her back hurts terribly. She cannot walk, but apparently before the injury she could not walk either. She's lying down in terrible pain. We turn her over and help her into a chair. Ana, doctora. I look after Ahmed, around 16 years old. Ahmed is a boy's name, I hope you're aware of that. With tight brown curls, which he constantly moves away from his face with a shake of the head in a childlike fashion. He has a wound on his arm from a few days ago. I check it. It's not infected. I clean and dress the wound. There's an entry wound and an exit wound. This I will not share with you, my girls. He does not make eye contact with me, and I wonder whether he really got wounded just strolling in the street or whether, I can't tell you this either. Ana, doctora, please, doctor. I took the Hippocratic Oath. My commanding officer asked me to come and help these people. I'm thankful for just how simple my role is in this complicated place. All I do is take care of people. I'm going to read you a second one, written by a woman. Listen carefully to her story. A year has passed, a year of reserve duty. It took me a while to get back to the front lines. For a year, I've had to explain to everyone how I left them behind at home, my 3 little ones, my husband and my job. 3 months already, 3 months of eyes rolling, whispers and people wondering out loud. How did she leave little Ellie? She now has 4 little ones. And she still prefers reserve duty? I'm at a loss for words sometimes. Not sure what to add, except that it's my duty, my responsibility. But today I found the words. It was after Shani Locke's funeral. I was shaking all over. I understood why I was serving. Thousands of people from every part of Israeli society accompanying the coffin, and everyone suddenly seemed as one. My officer tried her best, once again a woman officer, throughout the funeral to remain in control of her emotions. And now, which is later, and now, I really understand why I'm here. Never again. I can admit to myself, Shiri Bibas, the mother of the 2 infants who were murdered. It was your expression, the fear that you would not be able to protect them from this evil. That is my fuel, my motivation. The first time I looked into my children's eyes, after seeing the expression in your eyes, I slept on the sofa for 3 months with a knife under my pillow, ready to leap at anyone who might dare to come in through the front door, terrified, anxious, thinking of you, Shiri, in a continuous loop. Shiri, this is not how I wanted you to return, but I want you to know that because of you, I continue to serve, and I will continue to serve until they all come home. This is my promise to you. This is my promise to my children. This is my promise to myself. Otherwise, what is all of this for? So we're in a terribly difficult and painful situation. I'm sure that if you had an ex-general in the Israeli army speaking here, the tone would have been different. And of course, it's appropriate for him or her to speak differently from me. I say her because there are also women in the Israeli army who've had very, very high positions. Some of you will know when you travel with me in Israel, I have a preferred ex-senior member of the IDF who I love bringing for you to hear her because I think she's so excellent. If you had someone who had served recently in Gaza, maybe there would have been a difference as well. I think that what I can share with you, that what we all share at the moment, is Israel is a society in trauma, with terrible, terrible pain. The level of pain in Israel at the moment is something quite beyond belief. You know, you go to Tel Aviv, most of you know Tel Aviv, people are still out there. It's Tel Aviv. The young people are out in the cafes, in the wine bars, doing what young people should do, but you just scratch the surface. And it's the same with everyone. You just scratch the surface. What is going to happen, where will we get to, is a really tough question. You should know that at the moment, many thousands of young Israelis are very angry with the fact that the war is continuing. Is there an easy answer to dealing with the enemy that we still have to deal with? There's no easy answer. For me, it's a question of priorities. My priority at the moment is to get the hostages back. If the hostages do not come back, both dead and alive, please God, more of them should be alive than dead, the wound in Israel will be of the type that I'm not sure we will ever fully recover from that wound. I'm not sure what that means when I say it. I'm not sure what that means. But I think that most of us feel that that wound will be such that we will never be the same society again. Will we get beyond this? I would say it depends to an extent on what government we elect next time we go to the polls. Will we? And I am sure that the only government that will move us forward will be a government that will be wise enough to include people from over there, and from over there, and from over here. To elect a government now that is only made up of people from over there, or only of people from over there, is a government that will fail to do the important healing that Israeli society needs. It has to be a broad-based government of people who disagree about certain things, but agree about the crucial things. What are the crucial things? Once again, a tough question to answer. For me, it's not only the physical rebuilding of the country, which needs to be done, and thank you to all of you who participate in helping us rebuild the country. I know many of you do. Some of you even give the money directly to me, which, by the way, goes to the things that I like giving to. The trauma center for women who were sexually abused on the 7th of October gets a lot of the money that came from my friends. I also just this last week or two, we've been helping a family who, the mother was on the phone to Daphne, my youngest, on the 7th of October at 6:30 in the morning with her 2 little babies. Hello. With the little twins. And the husband went outside to try and save them, and he was killed. And she is now a young woman, Ethiopian background, no money whatsoever. We are doing all types of things on the kibbutz and broader as well to help her get back on her feet. And just got a wonderful WhatsApp from the kibbutz. We had a fair 10 days ago in which the proceeds and the fair went to help her, and we're helping her big time. And we have to get to a point in which we take care of all the pain, we deal with the emotional issues, we deal with the physical rebuilding, and we go back to remembering just who we are. A country that was created so that the Jewish people would not only have a safe home, which is the crucial thing we have to have, but also in which we could be the type of people that the wonderful heritage that we have, we can build on and pass on to future generations. It's going to be tough. It's going to be incredibly hard. But we have no choice. We have no choice but to go down that tough path. That's what I wanted to share with you. I'll now take another tissue, otherwise it'll look ugly. And ask whatever questions, comments. Feel free to disagree with what I said. Yeah, and mention your name, because I know most of you, but I have to admit that I don't do the name thing well anymore.
My name is David Scher, and I thank you for being here this evening. I also want to thank a number of our non-Jewish friends who are here today. It means an awful lot that everyone has come this evening. Mine harkens back to 1973, the Yom Kippur War. Probably because I was at Temple Bethel for a fundraising and rally for Israel. And I grew up in the Royal Friedman Rubenstein family. In fact, two of the speakers that night were Carl Friedman and Arnold Royal Stewart. One of Arnold's children was there. That was 73, and that was 52 years ago. And when I look around the room here tonight and try to find people who are 52 years old or younger, I hardly see anybody, which is really distressing. So my question is, and I'm not sure anybody can answer this, was Hamas, whatever happens with the war, were they successful in degrading the relationship between the younger Jewish population and Israel?
So I think the quick answer to that is it's definitely had an impact. And the question, though, becomes then, how do we respond to that? That is the real question. The question for people who care about the Jewish present and the Jewish future is, having a go at young Jews who are now finding the relationship with Israel more difficult it might make you feel better, not helpful, not very helpful. The question is, what do we do? I suggested to the wonderful rabbi I work with in New York that for one of the sessions I teach, that I co-teach together with a young Jewish woman student from one of the Ivy League universities. She said something, she was wonderful, she was excellent. She said something very profound that evening. She said that it is lonely to be a student in one of the top universities in America today. Everybody is involved in this awful competition with each other, and you're often left, you're on your own. She said she had only 2 options on her campus. The one is to be with the Jews who, Israel is right no matter what, don't in any way condemn Israel for anything at any point, or the Jews who are basically shouting, we want nothing to do with Israel. I believe we have to create a space for young Jewish people to understand that it is legitimate to ask the most difficult questions of Israel. You know, I was an infantry soldier a long, long time ago. And I can tell you that it is so easy to behave badly when you have a gun. It is so easy when you have power. You know, I will never forget a weekend which we were supposed to go home, and everybody at that same time was not going home to wives, they're going home to girlfriends, stuff like that. There's a terror incident where we were. You're not allowed to go home for the weekend. People were so angry. They didn't behave as well to the local Palestinian civilians where we were serving in the West Bank that weekend, that Shabbat. It's hard to behave well. But what you have to do is, I think we have to demand it. Our leadership has to demand it, and our leadership is not demanding it at the moment. And when a young Jewish person engages with me and says to me, yes, but there are certain things that I'm unhappy about with Israel, I say, I care so deeply about Israel, therefore it's easy for you to say there are certain things that I'm unhappy about as well. I think that we have to help young Jewish people deal with this incredibly complicated situation they find themselves in, because many of them want to live and act on behalf of a decent society. I think that Hamas has, I don't know if any of you have seen any of the satire from Israel. One of the great pieces of satire from Israel were two LGBTQ students from New York having a conversation with a Hamas guy, telling him how much they loved Hamas, and all he was saying is, I will throw you off the balcony, So they have managed in a way that is quite extraordinary. But to turn our backs on young Jewish people who have been duped by this and say, we'll have nothing to do with you, it's not going to help us. I think that we have to work hard. I can tell you that this particular synagogue I work with in New York, the rabbi is amazing. She is working with the families and with the young people, and there's a range of responses amongst the young people from that community. From people who've totally turned their back, people who have joined the anti-Israel protest, to people who have become closer and closer to Israel. And I think that it's going to be a tough road. It's going to be a tough struggle. But I think that we have to do it in Israel. The views in Israel around this stuff are also very, complex. There was this phrase at the beginning of the war, Yachad nenatzeach, together we will win. Okay, but the truth is in Israel, there are so many different opinions. Rabbi Angela Buchtel, some of you might know Rabbi Angela Buchtel, I saw her in Jerusalem. And, Angela says to me, you know that we are more sophisticated than this particular slogan wants us to believe. We know that there are differences of opinion. In the IDF, 2,000 reserved doctors in the IDF have signed something saying that because of what they stand for, the values they believe in, what is happening now at this moment in Gaza is problematic. Hundreds and hundreds of members of the leading pilots in the Air Force have stood up and said things. I say to young people, you too can have a voice that on the one hand supports Israel and the Jewish people and also makes clear that certain things cannot happen. But David, there are no easy answers to that question. It's going to be a tough one. I think we can do it, because I think we have great people, great educators who are capable of doing it. But it's going to be a really hard battle. And I have to say, I'm not going to talk about American politics, but it might be that the present decisions being made in America are actually not helping us, even though some people might feel that. I'm not sure that they're helping us. But that's a whole thing that you can talk about amongst yourselves. Yes, Janice, you had a question. Yeah. With these glasses, it's great.
I'm Janice Drell. I know of a number of young families who moved here after October 7th. And I know that, I would imagine that Israelis' sentiments about them run the gamut from they should do that, they have young children, they need to leave, to they're traitors. So I was wondering if there was a predominant view.
So the word traitor you don't hear. But that's not true. In my circles, you don't hear the word traitor. I'm sure there are certain circles in which you would hear the word trait. There must be. But I think that there's a great anxiety in Israel amongst people who really care about the future, which is many people, about the fact that some of the best and the brightest are going. You know, there are doctors making aliyah, but there are doctors leaving as well. The high-tech industry in Israel has lost so many of the entrepreneurs in the last year and a half that it's really pretty scary. One of the central figures in high-tech is in Israel. He hasn't gone. His daughter was murdered on October 7th at the Nova Festival. He was a man, by the way, who was very involved in helping Palestinians create a high-tech industry. The guy from Mellanox, Waldman. Really, incredible things. He says now he can't do it at the moment. He just can't do it. He also needs the healing, but many people are leaving. You know, when people point a finger, for example, at reservists who have left after 300 or 400 days in reserve duty, they say, seriously? What about all the people who are not reporting for reserve duty? It is really extremely, extremely hard. I get it when young families are filled with anxiety. It is there's at Yad Vashem, I have lots of Holocaust references. The Holocaust is always somehow front and center in my mind. There's a painting by a very famous Israeli artist. He did that. The painting is the Akedah, the binding of Isaac, right? When Abraham is told to take Isaac. Take your son, your only son, the one you love, Isaac. What a sentence of text. My God, he could have said just take Isaac or take your son. And it's one of the most extraordinary moments in Jewish text in the Torah, in the Old Testament for some. And this artist did a painting of the Akedah. And his son was killed in the army a little while after he actually did the painting. You do, when your children go to the army, they go with you feeling it can't happen to them. It's the only way you can send them. It's not going to happen to them. So there's tremendous anxiety. So people leaving. I believe that most of the people who have left will return. I think that if we have a change of government, I think many people will return. There's a great despondency amongst certain sections of Israeli society with our present government. And I'll just mention that the thing I didn't bring today was about our Minister of Internal Security, Ben Gvir, who, I'm not sure I should say this, because if he heard me say this, I know that I would be arrested. But I'll say it anyway, because maybe I need to be arrested. If this was Germany in the 1930s and he was not Jewish, I know which party he would be in. And I know that if I said that in Israel, I might get arrested, but I think that that's who he is. And I cannot believe that we have a future if we have people like him in our government. He, by the way, was not accepted to the IDF because he was a man who had done such terrible acts of violence and criminal activity when he was in his late teens that the IDF wouldn't take him. And now he's in this present government as the Minister of Police, basically internal security. So I think that there are mixed feelings, but I think that many people will return if there are certain changes. I want to say one last thing. Yes, go ahead. So March of the Living is something that we have every year. On Erev Yom HaShoah, the evening of Holocaust Memorial Day, there's always a central ceremony in Auschwitz Birkenau. I've been there quite a few times for that. And there's always, you usually have some musicians doing different types of music, often Israeli musicians who are children of or second generation, like there are many of them, Ivri Lieder, Poliker, many of them have parents who are Holocaust survivors. And this year it's going to be the young woman who plays the violin. And it's people thinking deeply about, how does one put certain things, certain symbolic pieces together. So people need to go. I see that. So you came up to say something, but before you say something, I want to say one thing, last thing. I do believe that it is crucial that people come to visit. I think it's absolutely crucial that people come to visit. And I also want to tell you that I think it's safe. Safe. I would say it's as safe as it was beforehand, but there's certain places you're not going to go to. That's the reality. Not many, by the way, but there's certain places you won't go to. I think it's important. It's important for a few reasons. One, it's so important for Israelis that people come. Most of the people who've come, by the way, recently are Christian pilgrims. Christian pilgrims always come. It's extraordinary. More so, I have to say, than Jewish people. And I think they're obviously, because of the feeling of being protected, maybe. But I was out at a farm today called Old Baker Farm with the kindergarten of the school, and when I told the farmer I was from Israel, wow, did I get hallelujahs and praise the Lord. It was like, I felt I was in a, what do you call it, one of those big, those events in which everybody, anyway. But I think it's important for Israelis. I also think it's important for people to come to understand and hear different voices. You need to hear other voices, not only mine. You need to hear people who are coherent and who have a different point of view to the one I have. It's important. Okay, I'm running out of voice, and I want to speak next week in Poland. So
Yes, you need to do that. I want to, on behalf of Temple Bethel and our partners, Temple Emmanuel, JCRC, and the Birmingham Jewish Federation, we are so happy that you came to be with us. You're our guide, you're our mentor, you challenge us, and we love you. And we want to thank everybody for being here. You didn't come to hear me speak, so please stay afterwards and schmooze as long as your voice was okay.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, down the hall in the reading room, there's that was wonderful. Thank you. Just take this over. That must get talking nonstop for that long.
How long did I talk about?
Hour and 20.
Wow.
And it went like this.